It's really telling that when M. Night Shyamalan makes his customary cameo in this one, it just seems like he'd really rather be anywhere else in the cosmos than in that room at that moment. Speaks volumes about Glass, to be honest. Remember when movies getting sequels decades later used to be a rare thing? Well, it helps if you stealthily embed one inside another movie, and that's kind of exactly what Shyamalan did with Split. If you're anything like me, you'll remember that, because it was pretty much the only interesting thing about Split, other than the fact that people were suddenly willing to throw money at the dude who made The Happening again. But people seemed to buy into it, James McAvoy was having fun. Why stop the party, right? Well, now it's time for the after party, and that after party takes the form of a sequel to both Split and Unbreakable that has the central characters of both, so Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, McAvoy, rounded up in an insane asylum to be cured of their superhero delusions by the new character of a doctor named Ellie Staple. She's played by Sarah Paulson and sporting an in no way foreboding creepy-ass name. The problem with locking up the smartest villain in the world, though, is, well, he tends to have a way of manipulating circumstances to his benefit, like, say, for instance, when you stick him across the hall from an insane juggernaut with a desire to eat people, that kind of thing. Also, we keep getting told there's a new skyscraper about to have its grand unveiling down the road, you know, on the corner of West 34th and Foreshadowing Avenue. I'm sure nothing will come of this. If I already seem bored reeling this off, it's because, well, everybody behind the camera seems bored, and everyone in front of it not named James McAvoy would visibly rather be organising their sock drawers than doing this. And yes, that means the enduring phenomenon that is the sleepwalking phase of Bruce Willis's resume continues unchallenged, even when you get him back to visit the critically acclaimed portion of his career otherwise known as the late 90s. Sam Jackson's trying to inject some life into it all, but though he's got the performance pretty much back to where we left him 20 years ago, he damn sure hasn't got the material, and more on that in a mo. Sarah Paulson's victim to about the same. In her case, it's not that we've seen her do this better before, though. It's more that she's on so many shows and in so many movies now that we damn sure know as a content-consuming culture that this actress could blow the roof off the whole show with really only a minor quality boost from behind the line. Those behind the line, though, couldn't care less. They're too busy letting McAvoy bounce around the place and hoping that energy levitates the whole shebang. I mean, it doesn't in any way, and the effect of relying on it so much ultimately renders McAvoy's Horde character kind of silly in a way even Split couldn't manage. But to be fair, the actor gives himself so thoroughly to the role that he steals every scene with relative ease, in part thanks to everything about each particular scene being so phoned in and so lifeless that it's kind of his by default. And let's lay the blame for all of this precisely where it belongs, shall we? Shyamalan, the writer-director of this dulcet heroes tribute, who once had the audacity to describe the entire endeavor as being the, quote, first truly grounded comic book movie, when actually what he should have called it was something that could potentially run comic book movies into the ground. It's so dull, so uninteresting, riddled with cliché and stuffed with conveniences, contrivances, and needless loop-back twists that don't make a lick of sense. All of which could almost be tolerable if the movie were in any way introspective or capably written. I mean, it starts off nimbly enough. They find that droll, pseudo-Hitchcockian tone Shyamalan used to like to shoot for, and they edge it along until they start leaning too hard on the style of Split, and then, right about the halfway mark, right about the point they wheel Mr. Glass in, the whole thing just goes bananas. All the DC-level undertones it's been letting flow under the surface at that point all erupt, and they're all of a sudden throbbing overtones instead. But with the added perk of being so droll and simultaneously full of themselves so as to curtail any possible enjoyment of them. The ropey writing, like the bulk of Shyamalan's post-Signs filmography, seems to just get worse as it goes on. Mr. Glass himself, for instance, spends nearly the entirety of his screen time as a sort of wheelchair-bound Danny Madigan from Last Action Hero, verbally prefixing his own actions with, like, ridiculous nonsense such as, if this were a comic, the lights would come on, right before he flicks a light switch. It's twaddle to the nth degree, dressed up as a sort of awkward tonal halfway measure between the deep internalized therapy drama of Unbreakable and the po-faced madness of Split. Because it manages to land close to neither, though, it just kind of sits there like a lump doing nothing whilst it continues insisting on how wonderful it all is. There's an actual scene in this grayscale hodgepodge that literally involves assembling the entire cast in a car park to yell about comic book tropes for 5 minutes. It's like Sunday afternoon at MCM. The entire supporting cast at one point gather together for literally no other reason than they in fact are the entire supporting cast, and the now requisite Shyamalan rug pulling for this one winds up so stupidly contrived that any semblance that any of this was taking place in the director's much-coveted real world dies the same mangled death as the victims of the train accident in the first movie. But at least they were spared the indignity of having to sit through this. The stylized look they've been touting in the marketing, with the different color schemes for each character, even that doesn't get much of a look in. I mean, for the love of God, even the Defenders managed that. That's like canon-grade filmmaking from the 80s, and M. Night Shyamalan can't even manage that? Obviously not. He was too busy ignoring everything that once made him the, quote, one to watch, and setting about lining up the most generic feature film adaptation of a Heroes episode he could muster. Not that anything he musters here comes with much in the way of motivation or effort. His cameo here, which incidentally is as the character he cameoed as in both Unbreakable and Split, is performance on the same energy spectrum as the average coma victim. He barely seems awake, doesn't seem interested, doesn't want to be there. And he winds up inadvertently becoming the mascot for the entirety of Glass as a result. I know people have been excited for this one, I kinda was too, more for Unbreakable than Split, admittedly. But this is the kind of dialed-in, passionless product that sank this director to begin with once upon a time. It's a film that will have you genuinely looking back on The Lady in the Water with just a touch more patience and understanding. A movie deserving of every Mark Wahlberg happening meme you can dig out and throw at it, and proof positive that the grand potential we all once saw with I See Dead People is itself now long dead and buried. 1 star, this was garbage. Mind-numbing, uninteresting drivel you'd be sure had been made on the disastrously cheap if it weren't for the fact that Bruce Willis has to have filmed at least a week on it, which I'm pretty sure he won't remember by now because, well, he's really not mentally present in the film itself. There's no glass half full, no glass half empty quip to be made with this one, it's just empty, full stop. Less empty, but still not a great movie, is London Unplugged, which opens this week. It's a British anthology movie with a cast that includes Juliet Stevenson and Bruce Payne. It's kind of cute at times, a bit kitchen sink in others, and it focuses on the lives of people living in modern London, exploring the rigmarole of just day-to-day living, chance encounters, stuff like that. It's divided into like 11 chapters, each of which are actually titled, by the way, and there are attempts to blend things like animation in there, a bit of comedy, romance, etc. And there's a framing device which seems to tie it all together, utilizing one character's jogging narration. The whole thing's written by Nick Cohen and Nick Hopkins. Cohen himself actually directed one of the segments, and the pair produced the lot, and to be honest, it doesn't seem to show because it all feels kind of so disparate and far too uninvolving for its own good. The cinematic style of it is decidedly lacking, even with the faintly interesting inclusion of the animation element. It never really comes together in any kind of a satisfying way. I mean, I love a good anthology flick, but this lacked any real hook and any kind of draw to suck me in at any point and tell me a great story. Instead, it feels predominantly like just a series of small, incomplete ones. And you come away feeling more flummoxed than anything else. I'll give it 2 stars for a couple of performances, for Juliet Stevenson, definitely. Otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend it. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.